That's 284-6597. We would also be looking towards the latter part of the program to entertain some calls. We may open the lines again based on our conversations. And if you do intend to give us a call to ask a question, you need clarity on some information and so on, you can also do so on 284-6597. That's 284-6597. And I'll encourage you to keep your comments and your questions brief so that we can give our guests and our panelists enough time to be able to answer as many questions as possible that may come in this evening. So I want to encourage you as you sit, as you become comfortable, to share the link, send it to a friend, send it to a neighbor, send it to your colleagues. And let's all take the opportunity to get into the program this evening. What we're going to be looking at a bit as well today is, as most of you would have known, we would have had the first sitting of this session last week, Thursday. And so there was a motion that was brought by the Honorable Chief Secretary. And we're going to spend a little time in the beginning of the program going through that motion, discussing what were some of the ideas presented and seeing how that weighed out against what we've been seeing happening right here in Tobago. Based on the information that we garner from that motion, we would then later on in this evening's broadcast begin to get into some of the issues and the comments and even the statements that led us to what that exercise was yesterday, being the national budget being read. So I want to take the opportunity right now to encourage you to share the live, get as many persons as possible logged on. We're going to take a short break to give you the opportunity to do that. And when we get back in studio, I'm going to introduce my guests and we're going to start our discussions off. So stay tuned, stay logged on, share the live. We'll be right back.
You can now get whatever you need whenever you need it anywhere in Tobago with Tapago. Your meals, medication, groceries, and shopping all delivered directly to you. No more hassle, no more stress. Get the Tapago app today on Google Play or Apple App Store.
That's TAPPOGO and let us deliver to you.
Check our website at www.tapogo.app or call the experts at 494-TOGO and 484-4746. Tapago. Relax. We will get it to you. Tapago's at your service.
I'ma play some tune like this.
Don't worry, my wife will back it up. Make me happy whenever you come. So me be very hard, fiesta, fun.
This one is for the people and them who don't care what nobody else have to say about them.
Them none of cash, broke where you have, where you know about.
It's too early for that.
Too early, good on. Video, but then enough nine. Girl, go to camp, girl, right. Nice.
Who's the one friend can drink all the alcohol no matter what?
Put a bottle and spoon and a cup in my hand and I'm winding up on my man.
Dream.
Coconut's Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, bull joil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meat served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules or if you are having a cooking day off.
I don't get up. They follow me money done as long as one on my head. They say too much, one thing to kill you, so what everybody had a dead. Don't knock it until you try it. Rum sweet. No.
Attention Attention soldiers, are you ready for the ultimate mission for Tobago Carnival? It's time to gear up for Army Fed Operation Rocks Glow.
I feel like I'm running tongue again. No place like home. Go down in the center, go down in the center,
We're taking the vibes out to the countryside, where a premier cast of live entertainment will be pumping all night long. Army Fed Operation Rocks Glow. Join us on Thursday, 24th October at the Sid Grace Sporting Complex, Roxborough, for the high-energy Wear White Soca Bashment Rocks Glow. Army Fed Tobago. Operation Rocks Glow.
And so, folks, we are back and you are viewing the Minority Report. In studio with me this evening, I want to go right into introducing my guests and panelists. To my immediate right, well arrayed in pink and looking so vibrant. I don't know if this is coming out of the evening of prayer we hosted on Sunday, but the Minority Councillor, Mrs. Petal Daniel Benoit. Welcome.
Good evening, and it's always good to be on the Minority Report. And yes, of course, we had a very, very spirit-filled day of prayer on Sunday. And of course, we are starting October, which is Breast Cancer Month.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So thank you for tuning into the Minority Report. Thank you for making the Minority Report the #1 program on this prime time, and just continue to share the live, and participate in the discussions.
Thank you very much. And also joining me this evening in studio is none other than no stranger to the Minority Report, former Assemblyman. No, I'm being prophetic. Hi. Former Secretary of Infrastructure. Former Councillor Kwesi Devines. How are you, sir?
I'm great.
Speechless with that.
Yeah. But I'm great. It's always good to be on a Minority Report. Good evening to the Tobago public, those locked in on social media, YouTube. I'm looking forward to a fantastic program this evening, and of course, kudos to the Minority team for what I could only class as a high quality and much needed spiritual awakening in Tobago on Sunday. So I must say hats off to the team.
Thank you very much as well. And you know, on that note, and I'm glad both Minority Councillor yourself and Kwesi as well, you all mentioned, Sunday definitely created a difference. Persons have been all today have been calling and messaging, and I got some messages even from one or two of the ministers this morning.
Oh, really? Wow.
Who felt that they're still in the mood.
Yes.
So as soon as possible, as we can host something else along the lines, they are ready, they are willing. One of them actually said that she felt as if this was such a spiritual uplifting for her, even that she's at a different level now and willing to function at that level so much for the benefit of Tobago. And I mean, I really want to say hats off to the minority leader, who as Minority Councillor, you would have indicated in the meeting when you came in to give the thanks, that he came in with urgency. On the Monday, it was just like, we have to get this done this week.
It was God moving in a mighty way. And as I said, this was something that we have been planning for some time.
Yes.
Like, we said we needed to start the term even before the term started. We said, we needed to have this day of prayer, because since we became a minority leader, minority councillor, we have been doing prayer and worship. And I think we had 2 successful.
Every year. Very successful.
And we said that we needed to have another. And we've been planning it for months.
Yeah.
And for one reason or another, we were not able to have it implemented. And on Monday last, the minority leader came in with urgency, and immediately, you know, as a team, as a group, we kind of huddled together and just started planning. And by God's divine, every minister that we contacted, that we spoke to that day, willingly accepted to be a part and felt that there's a need at this time to have such an activity.
And that speaks to timing. And the Bible speaks to timing. Even Jesus' arrival in the fullness of time. So everything is in perfect timing. So sometimes we think, you know, it's out of time and before time. And it shows then that you all are walking with the Spirit. And it's very good to hear that. And it's much needed, because I'm of the genuine belief that there's power in the tongue, and the Bible speaks about there's power in the tongue. The fact that a rudder could steer a ship and so on, and a bit can move a beast. And the fact is, there's power in tongue. Life and death lies in the power of the tongue. And there's been too much negative spoken into the atmosphere. There's too much vitriol spoken into the atmosphere. And we need to start speaking life. We need to start speaking peace and looking and praying and asking for wisdom, understanding, so that we can really come together as a people. And, you know, some of the scriptures that were quoted, you know, if my people will call by my name.
That was like a common theme.
And I think that was very appropriate, that we need to start as we are called. And as the pastor said, we are in La Trinity, Trinidad and Tobago. So I really am hoping and praying genuinely and earnestly that our men, women, children, boys and girls, all the well-wishers of Trinidad and Tobago diaspora can come together, because we are God's people. We are called by His name. And we need to ask for His forgiveness. We need to repent. We need to seek His face. And I'm looking forward to the fruit of a good life. And again, Peter speaks about the fruit of a good life, and the Bible speaks about the fruits of the Spirit. And we're looking for the fruits of the Spirit to really emanate and radiate from the people of Tobago.
So we also want to thank everybody who contributed to Sunday's successful Spirit-filled day of prayer. All the ministers. Thank God for leading Kelvin, the minority leader, in the direction. Thank God for his obedience. All the vendors, the staff at the Office of the Minority who went over and beyond the call of duty. We can't say how much we appreciate what you do. Everybody who came out and participated in the activity, you all contributed to the success of this day of prayer. And we can't stop saying how appreciative we are of your support.
Amen. I have to say amen to that.
You need to pass on a basket. You might get too much today.
We saw some other persons as well manifesting in Gibson Sunday that, you know, were very, very potent. Really lifted the spirit of the crowd.
The spirit was moving.
Yeah, we saw our very own political leader, Senator Ansel Dennis, really coming and breaking into a momentum of preaching.
Nice.
You know, we saw other persons.
Roots, man, that's good.
I think the spirit moved in everybody.
So
in a mighty way.
We definitely have to embark on this activity again. And, you know, coming out of that, we want to really reiterate, thank you for everyone who supported and continue to support what is the minority, what the work of the minority is. Continue in prayer, continue to give your ear, continue to give your, whether it's goods, services, finances, as the case may be, in the work of the minority, because indeed it is not just about administrative and going into the legislative framework and dealing with things in the house, but it is also about caring and nurturing the people of Tobago. And that will not cease As a matter of fact, it will only intensify going forward. So this evening, we want to jump right into it. Last week, Thursday, we would have seen the first sitting coming into after the break of the House and so on. And the administration laid a bill, not a bill, sorry, but a motion in the House. I would ask the director to pull the motion up on the screen for the benefit of persons who may not have been able to see it or to hear it. And while he's doing that, Minority Councillor, you were present in the House. I never envy you because I think that it takes quite a lot to sit through an entire sitting listening to absolutely nothing. You were in the House. Yeah. Share with us some of the information in terms of, firstly, the context of the bill, what it sought to achieve, and then what was your position on it?
So the motion basically gave the historical context of the allocation to Tobago, and it was calling on the House to call on the minister to allocate no less than the 5.8% as presented by the Chief Secretary in the June budget. And it further went on to insist that the central government urgently address the historical underfunding. So this was the original motion. However, the minority sought to amend the motion, and the minority leader, in responding to the motion, made some amendments. And the amendments basically was to have the House agree to support the bills currently before the Parliament. And of course, the bills currently before the Parliament has a minimum of 6.8% as all the members of the Tobago House of Assembly, in terms of the Executive Council and those members on the other side, basically saying no to a minimum of 5.8%, but 6.8%, sorry. But however, agreeing to their motion of requesting the 5.8% as requested by the Chief Secretary when he piloted the budget in June 2024. So
could you repeat just that part for me? Because I don't think some of our listeners really grasped that what you just said. So the amended motion was rejected.
So again, let me go back. So the Chief Secretary brought the motion, and the motion in essence was asking the House to ensure that the Minister of Finance gives the 5.8% of the request by the Tobago House of Assembly. The motion further went on to insist that the central government urgently address the historical underfunding of Tobago by increasing its budgetary allocation to adequately meet the island's expanding socio-economic needs.
Right.
So as a responsible minority, all of Trinidad and Tobago know that there are two bills currently before the Parliament. There has been extensive consultation in relation to the internal self-government bills. So the minority would have amended the motion to read that the House agrees to support the bills currently before the Parliament to increase the recommended budgetary allocation to a minimum of 6.8% of the national budget. And it further went on to ask the House to insist that the Parliament urgently address the historical underfunding, because the bills are currently before the Parliament. The DRC currently says that there's a band between 4.03% and 6.9%. And all successive governments, and this administration would have demonstrated in debate, be it UNC, PNM, at central government versus PNM, NAR, DAC, whoever is at the THA, management of the Tobago House of Assembly, we have seen successive governments giving to the Tobago House of Assembly the lower band between 4.3 and 4.5% of the national budget. So we have a situation currently where there are 2 bills in the parliament, and you have a minimum of 6.8% as a starting point.
Yeah.
You also have further consideration with the Fiscal Review Commission to give us in excess of the 6.8 if there are circumstances that require us to go in excess of the 6.8. However, when the amendment was moved or put to a vote, the majority voted against the amendment.
And that makes absolutely no sense. You see,
But it shows that for the sake of politics, for the sake of saying so and trying to prove a point, they're willing to suffer Tobagonians. Because recently I read for a group, a gathering of people, a Hansard excerpt, and I think it was MP Tanku from the UNC who was quoting a document signed by the late Ochoa Charles and Farley Augustine, speaking to rejecting the bills. And the point that we're making is that the Act 37 of 1980 got the THA resumed. It wasn't perfect. It had many flaws. People were extremely happy for it at the time. Act 96 came. We moved from part-time secretaries to full-time secretaries. We were not body corporate. There were many other things that we were happy about. And we are now in 2024. And we are saying, well, you know what? Act 40 of 96 has served this time. It's time for us to move forward. The process of lawmaking is a continuous one. There is no perfect law or bill that has ever been laid. I think there is good for the time. And I see the current 2 bills as definitely moving Tobago forward in terms of the definition of the island, lawmaking powers, the greater fiscal allocation and fiscal autonomy to go with it. So there are things that we can look at that are beneficial to Tobago without a doubt in the proposed bills. And instead of sending the signal that, hey, we are all on board, we are still seeing division, derision, and a sense of us moving Tobago divide and conquer, because the current assembly is very happy touting that PNM wicked, the only 2 wicked cry, and because it serves their purpose, it buttresses their position, and they feel buoyed by it whenever they stand on a pulpit or sit on the TV or go before the media. They can parrot over and over the 2 wicked, when in fact we have a beautiful opportunity where we can get a minimum of 6.8%, 1, and 2, the FRC, unlike the DRC, the FRC is a continuous construct of the bill. So it means that the FRC will be operating year in, year out. So for example, we just experienced the issues with the oil spill or even COVID or whatever have you. The FRC would have said, you know what? The fishing industry would have suffered tremendously. The maritime industry would have suffered tremendously in Tobago. We need to increase the allocation under natural resources and the fisheries. So Tobago should get, yes, it says a minimum of 6.8%, but we need to increase the allocation to take into consideration this occurrence or this natural disaster. We are losing on the opportunity every single day that we divide Tobagonians in the interest of political gain. The time is here, and that's why I love the prayer call, because the time is here for us to unite for a better Tobago, and let's start moving forward, because it's not the additional funding right now will not benefit the minority. It will not benefit the majority. It benefits all of Tobago. I mean, one may argue, well, do you really want to give these people lawmaking power and all of that? That's a different discussion. I am not speaking about who is there now and their capacity or lack thereof. I am speaking about what is best for Tobago. And currently, the proposed bills put Tobago in a better place. And we need to insist, we need to be very forceful and demand that our representatives support and offer their voices, their full voices of support to the bills that are in Parliament currently.
Coming out of this, again in this session, we would have heard a number of statements, and Minority Council, you would have alluded to I think, the clearest part of this discussion with respect to the motion and persons understanding what I call the folly of the motion, where you would reject a motion that supports 6.8, but then seek to support a motion that supports 5.8. I mean, a child could do the maths there. But beyond that, there are two clips that I want us to listen to in the Chief Secretary's delivery in the House. And when we get back from those clips, we're going to expand on it a bit more before actually moving from this point and beginning to look at some of what they are trying to, quote-unquote, hoodwink Tobago about. So, Mr. Director, could you pull the first clip of the Chief Secretary's presentation, please?
Now, I have every confidence, Madam Presiding Officer, that this motion and the presentations you will hear from the secretaries following will speak to the socio-economic development of Tobago, the challenge we face, and why in the budget presentation in June, I propose that we head back to the Dispute Resolution Commission. The motion as tabled reads, whereas the Tobago House of Assembly is constitutionally mandated to govern and manage the Tobago affairs or the affairs of Tobago under Act 40 of 1996, and whereas the Dispute Resolution Commission recommended that Tobago's allocation falls between 4.03% and 6.9% of the national budget, and whereas Tobago has consistently received allocations closer to the minimum, 4.03%, which is insufficient to meet the needs of the islands, to meet the island's growing needs, and whereas the underfunding severely restricts the THA's capacity to deliver essential public services while also limiting support for key sectors that are vital to the island's economic growth and social stability, and whereas the National Budget Statement on September 30th, 2024 presents an opportunity to address the historical imbalance in funding by providing a more equitable share of the national budget to Tobago, be it resolved that this House calls on the Minister of Finance to allocate no less than the Chief Secretary's recommended 5.8%, ensuring that Tobago has adequate funding for its critical development priorities, and be it further resolved that this House insists that the central government urgently address the historical underfunding of Tobago by increasing its budgetary allocation to adequately meet the island's expanding socio-economic needs. And, Madam Presiding Officer, as we go through that motion, and as I read it over and over and over, and I refined it over and over, I came to the conclusion that this House needed to assemble before the national budget and to essentially call on the Minister of Finance to allocate to the THA no less than 5.8% of the national budget to meet Tobago's urgent developmental priorities and to address historical underfunding of Tobago, so that we are able to grow at a pace that is equitable and equal, rather. Since 2021, the allocation to the THA averaged 4.4% of the national budget. The picture is pellucidly clear that regardless of which administration is in power at the level of the THA and which administration is in power at the level of the central government, Tobago's share of the national budget remains by and large unchanged. And you know what is very vexing and disappointing is that our colleagues on the other side and their handlers love to tell Tobagonians that if there is PNM in Tobago and PNM in Trinidad, that somehow they will get more. Trying to tap into the notion that if you have a big brother in the mango tree, you don't have to pelt mango. But it is clear that either those they call their brothers and sisters in Trinidad are really not the family at all, or they in Tobago are bastard children. Because the support received for Tobago does not change even when PNM is in power in both islands. Madam Presiding Officer, the budgetary allocations to the Assembly at the minimum level recommended by the DRC meant that cumulatively over the period 2001 to 2024, the Assembly was denied approximately $28.5 billion in financial resources. If resources were allocated to the THA, and that's if resources were allocated to the THA, in keeping with the upper limit of the bandwidth recommended by the DRC of 6.9%. Even at the midpoint in the range, which is 5.5%, it is meant that the THA was denied $13.5 billion over the period 2001 to 2024. Madam Presiding Officer, this situation is exacerbated by the fact that under the prevailing legislative arrangements, the Assembly lacked and still lacks the flexibility to entertain or engage in certain financial transactions to fund developmental activities in Tobago. Over the period 2001 to 2024, the only case of borrowing by the THA authorized by the...
So, folks, we're back in studio, and we would have had an opportunity to hear, as we like to say from the horse's mouth, the folly of the motion as we would have started discussing. Joining us this evening, as well as part of the discussion and panel, we have the former Secretary of Finance and Assemblyman and Deputy Chief Secretary, Mr. Joel Jack, in studio with us. How are you, sir?
Hi, good evening, Marilyn. Good evening to all of Tobago, all of Trinidad and Tobago, and to those persons who are locked on across the globe. Also, allow me to, to say a special good evening to our panelists on set this evening. Of course, the hardworking Minority Councillor, Lady Petel Daniel Benoit, and of course, my colleague, Councillor Kwesi David. It's a pleasure to be on this evening and to discuss serious business coming out of the budget. And I think all Tobagonians, we have to really be careful in terms of what we hear. You're talking about a biblical reference early on, and the Bible says to take heed how you hear and what you hear, because what I heard. So first of all, let me start off on some positive news of what I heard earlier yesterday afternoon from approximately 1:30, 1:45 thereabout to approximately 6:45 p.m. yesterday evening. The 10th budget presentation by my former colleague, the Minister of Finance, the 10th, and I believe he set a record yesterday for reading over 5 hours. I think in my first budget presentation, I was maxing close to 4 hours, but he was 5 hours yesterday. And he laid out in comprehensive detail accounting to the nation and to Begonians, where the country, where we're at in terms of the fiscal position of Trinidad and Tobago, the road that we have traveled since 2015, and I think some persons forget that, and what is our current economic reality. And in terms of his roadmap and his recommendations moving forward for the next fiscal year, and of course moving forward as we move towards fulfilling the roadmap to take this country forward, the Vision 2030. And a fairly comprehensive presentation, and I think all of Tobago and all Tobagonians, all business persons, and especially our young persons who are in sixth form and secondary school, they should really take some time, and I hope that they would have taken the time to read the budget, to go through the budget, and to see where we are heading as a country. What are the current economic realities? And don't depend on some of the negative voices you're hearing. And that is my cautionary note to persons. When I listened to the budget statement yesterday, I smiled. And I commended the minister afterwards. And I think for all of Tobago, all Tobagonians, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. One, when you evaluate the current allocation in comparison to what we received in the previous years, you have to ask yourself, how did the previous assembly manage? One, when you compare the allocation year on year, and over the past 3 budgets, how did we manage? How were we able to achieve so much with the limited resources that we have? The second question that Tobagonians that they have to ask themselves, they have to ask the question about accountability. Mm-hmm. What happened over the past 3 budgets, over the past 3 years with the financial resources that were allocated to the Tobago House of Assembly coming from the central government? What happened to those resources? And those are a couple of questions that I know we will treat with later on. And the first and the third question that we have to really ask ourselves is that there is a cry for additional resources. But why are we not receiving 6.8% of the national budget? And Councillor Kwesi Davids started to talk about it. Why? Who is responsible? Who has to shoulder the blame for where we are in this current position? And a final question is, what do you want money? What are your plans? Where is your socioeconomic planning document? What is guiding this assembly? Are we just on a crazy frenetic pace, expending money without a plan, without a focus, without any ethos? When we were in office, we were guided by several iterations of socioeconomic development planning documents. One, the Comprehensive Economic Development Plan for Tobago. The second one, CDP 2.0, redoubling our efforts. And the third one, we developed a medium-term planning framework to guide the affairs of the Assembly, a focused development program utilizing our scarce resources as we roll out our development agenda. And when you look at what was afforded to Tobago in the budget yesterday, I'm excited. Talking about hotel development, in addition to the Marriott that's coming. You're looking at a marina. You're looking at, additional infrastructure for the island, the completion of the airport. This focused development thrust is what is required on the island. And I want to thank the Minister of Finance for his support, because when we were in office, we always talk about the allocation plus. The Minister of Finance gave Tobago the fiscal flexibility to engage, to limit our resource mobilization, not to limit it just to the allocation. But we went beyond the allocation. We had the ability to borrow. We had the ability to engage in public-private partnership arrangement, and let me put that in inverted commas, not the craziness we see
Not
happening,
what we see now.
not what we're seeing happening now, but we had the PPP framework and we rolled it out, and we also had the ability to liaise with our multilateral partners to raise additional funding. So when I listen to the Secretary of Finance and about what the Minister of Finance did, I'm saying, no, you need to temper your statements. You need to review some of the previous budget documents in the division prior to 2021 and look at how we manage. There's a blueprint there, there's a roadmap there, easy for us to follow. I'm looking forward to the discussions that we would have later this evening. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Joel, for such a comprehensive entry. Minority Council, I knew that you wanted to touch on something with respect to that 4.4 conversation that the Chief Secretary would have started. We also want to, and Joel, you actually went in the right direction. We are seeing coming out of the motion and this request and to insist that the minister does this and insist that he does that. But over the last 3 years, the last 3 allocations, we have seen just in excess of $7 billion allocated to Tobago. And I think we need to take a step back, slow down a little bit, first of all, and to ask this administration to give an account for what was done with the $7 billion plus allocated. And I think they're trying, in their own words that they used in the press, to play smart with foolishness, to try to hoodwink Tobagonians into looking at what we are asking for, as opposed to holding them accountable for what we have already received and the absolute nothingness that has been done with it.
Well, let me jump in. Let me jump in, because before we ask them to account, I just want to inform Tobagonians that unlike other ministries, that when they receive the allocation, they have to ask the Minister of Finance permission how to move money from one vote to the next, from goods and services to development program. In Tobago and the Tobago House of Assembly, we are empowered to move and shift around our resources as we see fit.
Yeah.
So that allocation to Tobago, that $2.6 billion, has to be seen as money received en bloc, and that we could utilize those resources as we see fit. And I also want, and we will, in other broadcasts, we would disaggregate the data year on year to show that historical pattern of expenditure. And going back to the accountability issue, we will see that historically the Assembly has not exhausted its allocation, but has spent less. And we are not sure what the Assembly, this current administration, what they are doing, those resources. And yes, they have to account for that $7.5 billion.
Minority Councillor.
Yeah, so if we do the comparison and we go year on year and do the comparison between what the past THA administration and the People's National Movement would have received versus to what this current administration would have received, if we look from 2019 fiscal year ended 2020, the PNM administration would have received an allocation of $2.283 billion. In 2021, at the end of that fiscal or financial year, yes, the PNM would have received 2.134, a reduction. And in 2022, end of fiscal 2022, the PNM would have received 2.357 billion. So we know that in 2021 was when there was the changing of the guards. So that fiscal ending 2022 would have straddled both the PNM and the PDP, because the financial year ends at 30th September. the election was in December.
Right.
So we would have had 1 quarter into fiscal 2022. So the first fiscal year or the first financial year that this administration would have received a full allocation from the government was in 2023. And we are seeing an allocation of 2.52, and we see the significant increase from 2.35 to 2.521. Then in 2024, we have 2.585. And now again, we have an increase in 2025, the budget that was read yesterday, of 2.599. And the former secretary would have spoken a bit about it. What we have not seen, so we have seen the chief secretary in his former incarnation as Secretary of Finance presenting 3 consecutive budgets. When he was on the minority side, he lamented about doing the same old, because when he was on that side, he knew that the allocation will be somewhere in the vicinity of $2.3, $2.4 billion. So he spoke to the fact of doing the same old. And when you do the same old, you're basically likened to a mad person.
Yeah.
But in his first budget statement, he came with the same old. So he came with the same old introduction. Sometimes when you looked at it, you wonder if it was a copy and paste.
Yeah.
All the same old headings.
Yeah.
But what he did not include was the same old reporting to the people of how we expended the funds that they have received. So we didn't see how he spent the recurrent. We didn't see how he spent development program expenditure. We didn't see what was spent for CPEP and URP. We didn't see what was not spent, because we understand that the allocation, in particular for CPEP and URP, is very limited. So what the former administration would have done is to suppress, to transfer, to fit the bill in the next fiscal for CPEP and URP, because in all of the instances, you will have to supplement CPEP and URP in millions of dollars. So the allocation is $18 million, for example, for URP. However, the expenditure is in excess of $60 million in some instances. So you had to supplement some $50 million, $40 million in some circumstances. So the prudent management under the past administration would have recognized what was required to ensure that, one, persons are paid, to ensure that nobody is placed on the breadline, and to keep the economy at afloat. We have also seen where under this administration, there is a level of mismanagement. And I would continue to say it. When you look at how the funds are spent, you wonder what is happening. And you go back to the bonded agreements under the former administration, where to build a road under the former administration, now it is double and triple and quadruple to build that same road under this administration, because we are seeing where the unit cost of various items of expenditure to build this road has ballooned over time. We are also seeing where rent and lease, and I will continue to speak about this, because for me, this is reckless. So you are complaining that you do not have, or you are underfunding, but you're not managing what you have properly. How could the expenditure for rent and lease move from 10 million to over 30, close to $40 million?
Yeah.
And the chief secretary attempted to respond to that increase in the debate by saying that they are doing more work and they are purchasing equipment. But if you are purchasing equipment that has nothing to do with rent and lease, it's more, you would see minor equipment ballooning. So there is no real explanation other than mismanagement.
Yeah.
And if it is, we go back again to the road down at Shervan. We have a road
some time there
where the central government was prepared to fund this road as part of the airport expansion if you are saying that you are underfunded and the resources are limited, if you have another entity, in this instance, the central government, willing to fit that bill, why would you want to take your limited, inadequate resources, as you claim, to spend on a road moving from 60 million to close to 100 million? And that cost will continue to increase because this matter is currently a legal matter and is before the court. So we have to add the legal expenditure associated with this road. And the former Secretary of Infrastructure would have spoken about it yesterday, a road leading to nowhere. So we have expenditure climbing. We are claiming that we don't have adequate resources. We are claiming that it is underfunded. What's the opportunity cost of building that road?
Yeah.
How much could you have spent $60 to $100 million on that we have not spent?
And I just wanted to add, I'm yet to hear, I don't know if Minority Council could correct me, what are the terms? Because, I mean, it's, they're boasting about the model that they use to
But how is that model different from
what was the model? Well, what is different is at least there was some transparency, because what is the rate? So they have already taxed Tobagonians and hoodwinked Tobagonians with inflated rates. So we moved, I think, to $1,200 or $1,400 for a metric ton of asphalt. They were charging $2,800 a ton. So you're seeing that 100% that markup. But again, what we don't know, because while there were the 3 injunctions, mind you, the contractor never demobilized.
Yeah.
So you had to pay the contractor for all of those days. You saw additional works. The contractor is doing a drain going all the way down. So all of a sudden that's added as well. But we don't know what is the rate of interest that is going to be charged. So even if it costs 70 million today or 80 million, what rate of interest is the THA being charged now on top of the inflated construction costs? And I'm convinced that our grandchildren, and this, even the first person that looked me to this came from within the division. The person said, Mr. Levines, we better enjoy that road because my grandbabies will be paying for that road. Because we don't know what they would have cooked up to get that road to nowhere. There was no proper plan. And again, it's because they peeped and they saw we left all of the plans there, the conceptual designs. And they jump up and say, well, we could build this road. But in fact, a lot more was to build a road, a lot more is needed in terms of surveys and so on. Without even the road being used, we saw cracks in the road, and it's falling apart. And this is without water, without wear and tear. So the quality of the work is poor. And as it is now, they're boasting about the 2 roundabouts on the road. But what are the roads used for? And then the roundabout, poorly aligned, lane violations. I mean, you name it. And I mean, there were so many examples of great roundabouts they could have.
They could have copied.
They could have copied. If you want to copy, continue to copy. Go to Hawkins Cure, look at it, study it nice, and try to replicate it. But I think what we also need to look at, Maryland, because I hear the Chief Secretary and his administration trying to parrot that they need more money from the central government to develop Tobago. But there are 2 things we need to be very mindful of. One, the public service, and Mr. Jack is very well aware, does lead the way in terms of policy mandates, setting the tone and the direction of development, yes. But there is a role for the private sector as well. As Mr. Jack alluded to, there's no plan. We have no clue. If an investor wanted to come to Tobago in a real way, we have no idea what the priorities are. We don't know if the priorities fisheries, sport. Because if they say it's sport, because we see the Chief Secretary say sport, but then we have the good old pavilion languishing. We have the backlit indoor facility languishing. If we say it's fisheries, we have the Palatine Bay facility languishing. We say it's community development. Blue Food Village started and shut down. Charlottesville Community Center languishing. Charlottesville Pavilion languishing. What are your priorities? We have no idea outside of travel. And now I heard even after the Secretary of Settlements went to Jamaica to look at how to build houses, they now want to buy some container houses in case that's the information that is coming to me. So you have, there is nowhere. At one time a plan was done for Friendship Estate. I don't know if you all remember. There was a sud turning for a water park. They ran the road through the water park. After you turn the sud for the water park, you run the road through the water park. I know that they went and they were saying that there's a plan to put a Formula One track. They did surveys for Formula One track at the Friendship Estate. And so again, it's like, what are you really focusing on? So in terms of public sector driven development, there's no plan. And then we now need the private sector to support and push the development as well. Because the public service will provide certain services, public sector services, roads, supporting infrastructure, but the private sector would really push. But we are now starving our private sector. We are seeing an alarmingly high economic leakages from Tobago. $300 million of development funding spirited away from Tobago already, which could have been used, spent in Tobago, because construction is a great way, has a good multiplier effect, like the tourism sector. You spend the money, you have people with trucks, you have, the money would have been spinning around, that 300 million would have been moving around and around in Tobago all at this time. So what we saw under the PNM, and Mr. Jack mentioned it, we provided such a great platform for development, the continued development of Tobago. Because to develop Tobago is not just building roads and physical infrastructure. We also look at the human capacity. And many, if not all of the secretaries of the current administration benefited from PNM policy, from scholarships and grants and so on, to ensure that they can go and study. So we developed the human capacity, and we looked at all of the physical. We have, Tobago is one of the islands in the Caribbean that could drive all the way around. Again, because of PNM, we began creating access even to the agricultural lands, and we started up the business development unit because we wanted to get small businesses. You saw even in the 80s under Margaret Thatcher, we were seeing small businesses as being a driver for economic development. The PNM did all of these things, laid it out nicely. We have a land bank so that there's accessible land to use. Now they're using the land to do anything that they dream of doing at any time. So there was such a great platform that was laid for development. And then the government, as we were in conversation, we said, listen, more needs to be done in terms of the development of Tobago from the private sector side. We came up with the idea was we need a brand new airport, because the airlift, the complaints are that we not getting kind of airlift, because tourism is really the driver we're looking at. New airport, 2 new hotels, and we had fights against the airport. Now I saw a video of the Chief Secretary boasting about the new airport after they were trying up to when they got into office
to shut it down.
He's trying to take it over.
And they tried to take it over and boast about it. Sandals, they shut it down. Marriott, they attempted to shut it down. Now I'm hearing they're even boasting about Manta
Lodge. I was going to show that.
And I'm saying that we need to be realistic. The entire development and all of these projects were proposed and funded by are willing, because for all of these things to happen, physical development, human capital development, the land bank, business development, you need political will. And we've had on our side for the last going on 10 years, the political will of a prime minister who shows that, listen, Tobago is a priority. We had a PNM in Tobago saying Tobago is a priority, setting things up nicely. That we had THTI, now THTI is a ghost town. We won't get into that tonight. But all of these things were done because we saw, you know what, we can move tourism forward. We can develop Tobago using the economic drive and injections from tourism. Because then fisheries would benefit, agriculture would benefit, everybody would benefit. And of course, the rising tide floating all boats. But we are seeing again the fight down for the interests of political power. And we need to move the conversation past, we get 4.4%, but it's really 4.2%. And we didn't get this and we didn't get that, to start saying, okay, Tobago, just as we did on many occasions, Mr. Jack, Tobago, we had a plan for 6 billion or 5 billion. We have received 2.3 or 2.8, whatever it is, 2.4 billion. We are now going to tell you our priorities. We are not going to lay them out. We say what the plan is and then we work the plan. And we have done that time and time again with great success. And that's why you have the Shore Park Cultural Complex. That's why you have the housing developments at Ventia, Bell Garden, Blenheim, Renaissance. That's why you have all of these community centers, health centers, the Roxwell Administrative Complex, and the list goes on and on and on. Because even when we received the funding that everyone else may deem inadequate, we put our shoulders to the wheel.
Yeah.
We said, you know what, we have a plan. We were extremely laser focused, and we were not caught up in the parties and the popularity games and flying here, there, and everywhere every Monday and Sunday morning for a joyride and to ensure that they get podium in your pocket. We were not into those things. We were into the business of the people of Tobago. And that's what I'm not seeing and not hearing coming out of this budget and the post-budget discussion from the current administration.
Chrissy, I'm glad that you went in the direction you did, because what we're essentially seeing here now is that Tobago really needs to be asking a different question. What you did, you took the time to outline just a scratch on the surface of the development under the People's National Movement over a 21-year span. And I remember one of the mantras that this administration, formerly the PDP, came in with was billions spent. And what was it spent on? And we were able to prove to the dollar everything that it was spent on. We're still asking the question now, 7 billion spent. And what is there to show? Mr. Jack, you wanted to get into it.
No, definitely what is there to show, and I think all Tobagonians should be concerned in terms of what is happening with the resources allocated to this administration. And I mentioned it previously, and I just want to go back to a point. In section 3 of my previous budget statement, in detail, I took the time to outline the expenditure as at the end of the financial year for the previous year, the allocation we received, recurrent, DP, CPEP and URP, what was the unexpended balance, that amount that would be
that is accountability.
We would transfer to the contingencies fund, what was the allocation and what those funds were spent on. And in detail, we reported to the people of Tobago what we did with their scarce financial resources. And I have looked in shock, in unbelief. Here is someone who promised transparency and accountability, but in each of his budget statements, successive budget statements, I believe 3 to date, we have seen no accountability with respect to the funding received from central government, no accountability with respect to what is the balance in the contingencies fund, what it was used for. And we have seen a very dangerous and damning trend from this administration. I want Tobagonians to ask some serious questions, because you're asking for more money when you have not yet accounted for the funding that you have received.
That's where we throw more water into the kill buckets.
Secondly, you spoke about the involvement of the private sector. Again, one of the many documents that we prepared in the Division of Finance to guide and to accelerate the pace of the island's development was the Tobago Infrastructure Investment Strategy, that TIS program, a 20-year document mapping out in 4-year periods our infrastructure development plan. We put it together because we wanted to involve the private sector in a meaningful way, to partner with us, to assist us in mobilizing scarce financial resources, partnering with us, and also to assist us in rolling out a number of those projects. So that plan exists. And when I was preparing to leave office, Marilyn, I left a dossier and a note on the Chief Secretary's desk, welcoming the incoming Secretary of Finance and, telling him about the task ahead, the enormity of the task, and willing to assist. And one of the documents that I left on his desk was the TIS, was the medium-term planning framework, the expenditure reports with DP, and recurrent, and as well the Tobago Statistical Digest, and so on, to assist in him getting up to speed. So if you are in office now, it's the Tobago House of Assembly. We all love Tobago. And what you could do, own some of the projects. I mean, they tried to own the airport, and they made a mess of it. But so we left certain things to guide them over time, but again, studiously ignored, because the role of the assembly and government is to provide that enabling environment to stimulate and to foster economic development and to increase the confidence of the private sector and instill confidence within consumers. But we're not seeing that today. You look at the Tobago private sector and you're wondering what is happening. You look at what happened, how we were able to stimulate the economic recovery post-COVID. It was working collaboratively with the central government, putting together a post-COVID pandemic stimulus plan, getting the additional funding, and we're seeing the requisite result. The economy did not plummet as we expected, and we're able to turn things around and to accelerate the pace of recovery, 4% of GDP year on year. When this administration came into office, what happened subsequently? We have seen economic decline. We have seen what happened
steady
with employment. And this is a tricky part because construction, outside of the public sector and the tourism sector, construction made up about between 1,600 to 2,200 workers. And if you shut that down, limiting all your major contracts to your friends and your financiers in Trinidad, what will happen to those unskilled young men, those boys not having anything to do? And that's a major concern. So there is no plan, there's no accountability. Where are we headed, Tobago? We are concerned. And we have to issue a clarion call and ask for accountability. And some persons might want to say, "But Mr. Jack, what did you all do in the assembly during your time with respect to accountability?" I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked because, time won't permit. But let me just outline a couple. We modernized the assembly's accounting architecture. We were transitioning to the National Public Sector Accounting Standards, IPSAS. We're going to modernize the Assembly's accounting to computerize all the Assembly's accounts. We were working with the World Bank and General Government. We had a major plan that was in train. I see it has been owned and adopted as yes, but that's fine. That was in train. We also had ACH and the payment processes so that instead of workers having to their salaries taking long to get to the bank, that was a thing of the past. Additionally, we had a rating by Moody's. What that meant is that you had to be reviewed annually by the Moody's rating agency. And if you're serious about attracting investment to the island, if you're serious about borrowing and mobilize funding outside of your allocation, that Moody's rating, one of the singular pieces of things that you had in your arsenal to tell investors, to tell the investment community, both locally and internationally, that you're serious. You're serious about developing Tobago. And that was one of the first things that they threw away. They cast it aside, not knowing the importance of the rating. The next thing that we did was, we had the IMF Article 4 consultation. We became part of that. And again, opening up the assembly to further scrutiny. And I can go on and on. So you're talking about transparency and accountability. We were, as I used to say in the past, my famous statement, we welcome scrutiny. Please come, because once you open up yourself to scrutiny and evaluation by international and public bodies, it enhances your productivity, it increases productivity, and also improves your operating efficiency. And that is what we did previously in the Assembly, and that's what we will continue to do when we get into office next year.
I need to apologize for that one.
and you know, I want to touch on something as well. I listened last night as well to the post-budget press, and I had a very uncomfortable sleep because I heard.
You rubbed you of your sleep, Mara?
Yeah. I heard the now newly minted Secretary of Finance seek to disrespect who the Chief Secretary introduced as the longest serving finance minister in the country, who served in 3 consecutive terms of economic recovery, who, consistently, and this is even post-COVID, where every other country around the world is experiencing decline, and international bodies are rating Trinidad and Tobago's recovery. And the
IMF,
Minister of
Moody's,
IMF,
SMP.
Moody's, World Bank, the Minister of Finance, as prudent as he may be, has guided this country. And I heard someone who has contributed absolutely nothing to the fiscal landscape of Tobago, who just walked into an office, has not even sat on the seat properly, condemning somebody who the entire world has already indicated that his measures are affecting the country positively. And this is the same type of attitude we've seen from the Chief Secretary, from the Secretary of Infrastructure, just come in and tear down, condemn, and they've contributed absolutely nothing thus far.
She was given a script, so you have to, I don't want to.
I was upset.
She was given a script, and again, I would urge the newly minted secretary, temper you.
Yes.
Let me allow our petal.
Our petal. Somebody actually asked me that tonight. The message said, "How you all have that petal on tonight?" I said, "No, it's ours. This one is our petal."
Yeah, no, and temper your statements. They will come back to haunt you. And as a professional, keep your words sweet in case you have to eat them. Temper them, please. I want to urge this incoming secretary. Temper. When I came in as secretary, I took the time to listen and to learn and to understand and to read. And you have, all the previous budget statements. You have the information. Please, take time and read for yourself. Well, let me allow my colleagues to respond.
And I'm happy both former secretaries would have laid the foundation in terms of there was a platform. So there was a platform to build upon. What I find very disappointing is that based on the conversation in the space, there's no hope. There seems to be no hope.
Yeah.
So although you would have received consecutive increased allocations, there seems to be a hopelessness of this administration. So you have gotten 2.5 in the development program, $205 million in the development program, and based on the conversation, we are unable to do anything. We are unable to further our development program agenda. But even by their own utterances, they have indicate that under the People's National Movement THA administration, we have received less allocation.
Yeah.
And the former Secretary of Infrastructure would have demonstrated. And you could just look around. The general standard of living of Tobagonians improved significantly when the PNM came into office in 2001. And we saw where we were on P2. Some homes that had one vehicles now have multiple vehicles.
Some are no homes.
Some, yes, some there were no homes. Now, people have homes and houses. We would have seen where the disposable income of citizens would have improved and increased. We would have seen the establishment of businesses. And this is all at a time where the allocation to Tobago was less than it currently is.
Much less.
So to paint this picture of doom and gloom, there is no creativity, there is no innovation. It's like we have 205 million and that's it. The former secretary would have spoken about, we receive our total allocation of 2.59 in this instant, 2.599 for fiscal 2025. You can prioritize within the development program in the first instance, because yes, you have over 300,000 development program projects, but can you execute with whatever unlimited funding you have? Can you execute those 300 in one fiscal? I took the liberty to go back into the development program estimates. And yes, they have 300, but there are a number of projects where you see that there are allocation, but the fiscal, there's no expenditure. So in the first instance, identify what your priorities are and seek to reprioritize and shift around within the development program. You also can suppress and transfer. And I heard some discussion last night about suppressing and you're not able to do some recurrent things. But even within the recurrent, there are positions that are unfilled, that there may be some expenditure allocated to. You could start with those to suppress and shift. There are also other measures that can be explored. And I just find that there is a level of divisiveness. And there's a level, I know we are in the election season, but I feel like we needed to be more prudent. We needed to be more measured in our conversation. And there's a level of disingenuity because, again, I peruse the estimates. And what I recognize, particularly in 2003, although they are complaining with the limited allocation, in 2023, sorry, the DP allocation was 300 million.
Yes.
However, when you look at the estimates and the actual expenditure for the Tobago House of Assembly under the development program, expenditure is 400 million. So where did the 100 million come from?
Well, they got additional.
They got the additional 1 million.
100 million.
100 million. But what I am saying, and even if you look at the recurrent expenditure as well, that recurrent expenditure, we are seeing that could be suppressed. And
right.
Oftentimes, when you have the communication between the Ministry of Planning, the Ministry of Finance, and the Tobago House of Assembly, we have the conversations about the latitude that you could have on the recurrent side. I don't know of any government that has all the resources that they require for the development of a country.
Except heaven.
No. No.
So it goes to show that you have to plan, you have to prioritize, you have to make use of your limited resources. Precisely. An example is this: the Secretary of Education boasts about spending 20 million in school repairs program, and when compared to the expenditure by the Ministry of Finance, coincidentally, the expenditure by the Ministry for school repairs is 20 million. The number of plants in Tobago, when compared to the number of plants in Trinidad, is significantly greater. So even if you do that comparison, it shows that we are in a better position than Central.
Yeah.
And if you want to speak to fiscal wickedness in high places,
Agreed.
Look within.
Look within is
Look
right.
within.
each, as part of the process of budgeting, the divisions are issued a call circular. I am sure the request from each division within the THA, the full request by the division of community development, the division of settlements, the division of agriculture, those requests to the division of finance, did they receive that full request? The division of finance, being the oversight body, had to look and determine and cut back, I am sure, all the divisions based on the request.
Yeah, right.
Similarly, the ministries of government would have a wish list that they would submit, and based on the available resources, the Ministry of Finance will look at the pie and allocate accordingly. In many instances, and if you look at the estimates, the THA have received more than most ministries. And again, we have to seek to be creative. How do we collaborate to ensure that we get what we want done? Another example, I have seen the collaboration between the Ministry of Finance, of Youth and National Service, and the Division of Community Development. Even today, there's an example of opportunities through collaboration that is available at the central government. We would have seen 2 programs launched a week and a half ago in collaboration with the ministry that can benefit. And we hear the conversations that they talk about excess money and additional resources being spent, and we can't identify. But we can identify. And I think if we look beyond the numbers, if we seek to be more creative and innovative, we could work within our means.
Well, more than we can work. The model is there. We did it since 2001 coming into office as an administration, managing with scarce resources, developing the island. And if you look at all the socioeconomic indicators, all the social indicators, social infrastructure, by far, when Trinidadians drive across Tobago, I mean, prior to when we were in office, they were impressed in terms of what was happening, the transformation, all the health facilities, the infrastructure, the community facilities, the 211, the level of development on our roads and our schools. And that wasn't by accident. You spoke about managing resources, and let's look again at opportunity cost. Remember, we don't have all the resources available to us. We have scarce resources, both in Trinidad and in Tobago. And the minister alluded to the fact that our revenue base coming out of the oil and gas industry over the next 24 months or so will be constrained until 2027, when we expect all of the gas deals that we have undertaken as related to the cross-border gas deals. Those will kick in, as well as our deep or offshore gas. Those will start coming in. But prior to that, we are managing scarce resources. And a prudent Tobago administration would appreciate the challenges nationally. And you know, sometimes a child coming to mommy, I want this, mommy, I want that, and you ain't get it, and you want to make noise. No, but a prudent, responsible administration would understand. We have received our resources. Let us sit, prioritize, set down. Because this is what we did in 2013 coming into office, you know. And that is why we started having that reallocation motion in November after the passage of the budget, to report to the people of Tobago, these are priorities, these are the projects we will focus on, and we will we commit to deliver to you within the fiscal year. And these are the projects that are non-priority that we will postpone. We had about non-negotiable priorities. We had a priority 1 and priority 2 projects. And we restricted expenditure on the recurrent side, because when you disaggregate the data, we received approximately annually over 70% of our recurrent expenditure. The challenge historically has been on the DP side. And he said, listen, let us restrict recurrent, because recurrent, we need to invest in productive goods, in capital goods to develop the island. And that is what we started doing in 2013, reporting to the people, deepening the democratic process and saying, listen, based on our discussions and our consultation with the people of Tobago, these are the projects that you have agreed on. Based on our surveys, these are the areas you want us to focus on. And we restricted recurrent expenditure and invested in our development program expenditure. The model is there, the motion is there, and the persons who are now in office, they participated, I could say fortunately, unfortunately, since that time, 2017, and they saw it. The model is there. Again, I want to urge both the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Finance. No, I mean, you have a responsibility to the people of Tobago to manage these resources in a prudent manner and to report how you allocate and you use these funds moving forward. And this cry, this hopeless cry, to me, it is a smoke screen. It is. When you look at the numbers tell me that something is going on there that we will see coming out over the next 2 fiscal periods. And I am concerned, as all Tobagonians should be, with what is happening in the Tobago House of Assembly.
And more than that, I also want to place on the table that this is a precursor to 2026. And because this administration was not able to deliver on its promises.
That's right. They're looking for
this is a preamble.
That's right.
When they come to you in 2026 to tell you that they have not achieved what they promised, blame it on the central government. Because before they came into power, they knew what the allocation was. Because the Chief Secretary was able to tell the former Secretary of Finance that you also, you know it's 2.3. Cut your cloth. Precisely.
And Maryland, next week we have to come with those recordings. With so all of them.
You knew exactly.
You knew it's nothing new.
You knew. And even in the circumstances of
you gave a
knowing,
commitment.
You made a commitment to the people to come and fix it.
Were you deceiving the people at Tobago? That is the fundamental question we have to ask.
That is the question.
And this is the preamble to 2026. Because you are unable to manage, because you cannot fulfill the promises, because you are not accounted to the people. This is the precursor.
Yes.
And I think
we have to
sum
tell
it
them
up,
we're not accepting that, Maryland. We're not accepting that.
we can simply sum it up, and this is how I look at it. The framework is there, as we've all seen, discussed, but the capacity to fill the framework and cause the system to work well is absent.
The capacity is absent. The maturity,
is absent.
The political will is absent, and the honesty is absent.
And integrity is absent.
Integrity.
I want to just highlight one comment made by someone on the live, and it speaks volumes to how much Tobago is listening. The person said that they now understand the jargon of finance, listening to this petal speaking. Because the former who they heard yesterday had no clue what she was talking about. Just trying to enrage the population. And it's chalk and cheese. And you come here and you listen to what is being said. And I mean, this is not me trying to big up Petal, even though I begin up Petal. What we heard here tonight was a comprehensive breakdown, systematically, that even a child could understand, and it was presented using all the necessary financial frameworks. And this speaks volumes to what the People's National Movement is in waiting to deliver again to Tobago, to take up from where we left off, to shake off the framework which has not been used, and then to continue developing Tobago, not just in terms of infrastructure, but continue capacity, continue building the island, continue
capital development, continue empowering our young people.
Exactly. Everything that is written in a plan.
Tobagonians are suffering.
And the things that were things of the past, or the issues that were things of the past, we have now seen them resurfacing. Studley Park Quarry.
That's right. Things we dealt with.
Ended the trucks lining up at the night before.
That's right.
We moved to a position of profit at spell.
That's right. Exporting aggregate up and down the island.
Now we are back to a situation where trucks are lining up. We moved, and I think, former secretary, you were part of that regime. We moved from where we could not pay for the school fees for students studying abroad.
I was impacted in going to university, going to class, hold on, you're not sure you can.
We have
you can attend.
And now we back there.
Yeah, we have built
students being put out
confidence in the financial institutions,
but
the
that
banks,
has gone long.
From
the first time in office,
has been eroded.
That has been there. That has gone. No confidence.
From the time you see THA banks telling you.
And the bounce check, wait, the bounce checks. The bounce check lady is now the secretary who was the head of the bounce check.
Yes.
Tobago.
And who presided over losing Moody's.
Tobago.
Yeah. So
I
folks,
am concerned.
we are out of time on this session. But that's
we
the
need
thing
some
with
time. We need some extra time.
However, once we have the commitment, we continue this discussion next Tuesday, where we will, in the words of a program opposite to this, delve deeper. we will continue to delve deeper into these discussions, because I think it's important for all of Tobago not to be fooled by this foolish talk and this tomfoolery we're hearing. Even the Chief Secretary saying we're going to be on all the media platforms promoting this nonsense about we're not getting what it is we're asking for. What we want them to do on every media platform is to tell the people what the 7-point-something billion was spent on and justify.
How much went to Trinidad, your friends and your financiers in Trinidad.
So folks, I mean, thanks. This was a very enlightening panel, very engaging. I know each one of you in your own right could speak for the hour and a half. So next week we're going to, God's willing, continue this discussion and delve deeper. And folks, we want you to continue to stay locked on with us, continue to share the information, become agents of truth and not agents of lies. I'm Marlon David saying thanks for being with us. Have a wonderful evening and God bless.
Thank you.